Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about emotional anorexia and the dismissive avoidant attachment style. So we did like an hour-and-a-half long webinar on this topic today, and there were so many wonderful questions and recognitions and realizations and understanding because we specifically applied this to the dismissive avoidant. So I wanted to come in here and just share like a high-level version of some of the things that we touched on. PDS right now inside of the school, we're doing 3 live webinars a week, soon to be 4 live webinars a week. 2 of them being where you can get your personal questions answered. It's just live Q&A about the courses. It's me providing support to the students. And then 2 informational, so bonus content, 8 or so times a month for an hour and a half on top of the regular 2 released courses every month. So basically, when you go in, there is a tremendous amount of support and community and just stuff going on, whether it's bonus content webinars about everything from like narcissism to things like this, counterdependency, emotional anorexia, these big topics, to the actual courses that are longer in length and pre-recorded with workbooks and exercises and support materials. So we are still doing a sale to support our community right now. We're offering 25% off of 3-month bundles, 6-month bundles, any like membership bundle. And the coupon code is with you, all one word, and I will be putting a link in here. I'm also jumping on a free summit with a friend of mine, Joel Brown, and his Addicted to Success community, where it's basically a whole bunch of speakers and amazing authors, and I'm going to put the link to that in the description box below. I'm not able to post it on the YouTube video for some reason, but it's in the description box below. If you want to sign up for there, it's free. You can sort of tune in whenever you like, and I would love to see you there as well. So, and it's also like me and all these really wonderful, amazing people who are just experts in the relationship field. So I recommend jumping on for that, and it'll be a fun afternoon. So, okay, so let's talk about this topic. So emotional anorexia, like I've just been finished making these videos about counterdependency, and emotional anorexia is sort of like one of the underlying root causes that can lead to counterdependent behaviors or a counterdependent relationship dynamic between 2 people. So they go very much hand in hand, but you can think of emotional anorexia as being a coping mechanism that can be very deep-rooted, that can sponsor the counterdependent relationship dynamics or behavioral patterns that put somebody in the counterdependent under the counterdependent umbrella, you could say. So I want to take it like a step back and understand what's going on underneath that so that we can take a deeper look. Now, I will be doing a series as well on anxious preoccupied attachment style and codependent behaviors and some different key points about that, but I really wanted to take a step further and deepen the topic around emotional anorexia today. So emotional anorexia, not to be confused with sexual or intimacy anorexia. I can do a different topic about that, but we can think of sexual or intimacy anorexia as being something that falls under emotional anorexia, which is basically withholding sex or intimacy from a partner because of some of these underlying core patterns. So let's think of emotional anorexia as being the compulsive avoidance of establishing or creating deeper connections and relationships. And this is the result of either having a problem giving or receiving social, sexual, emotional connection and nourishment from other individuals. And this can be either because a person is suppressing their needs to actually receive love or fears giving it. And I want to look at we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the core symptoms. And we're also going to talk about some early strategies in terms of what we can do. So when we look at the dismissive avoidance specifically and emotional anorexia, you can think of dismissive avoidant as being a spectrum. Some individuals have like dismissive avoidant edges, like they just have little parts of dismissive avoidance. Some individuals are a true dismissive avoidant attachment style. Some dismissives can be dismissive avoidant but still lean a little towards fearful avoidant and have little moments of anxiousness and a little bit of ambivalence and swinging. Then we can have people who are severely dismissive avoidant, and then we can have somebody who's severely dismissive avoidant enough that they're really experiencing a lot of these symptoms of emotional anorexia. So just to be clear, not all dismissive avoidants have patterns of emotional anorexia, but many individuals who are experiencing emotional anorexia, what we could use as a term, are likely dismissive avoidant. Okay, so I hope that's really clear. So why does this happen specifically with dismissive avoidance? Well, it happens for dismissive avoidance where they tend to struggle both giving and receiving. Fearful avoidants have like partial emotional anorexia from time to time, certain individuals, because they really struggle to receive. So I'm going to go through the differences here, and I can do another video for that specifically. But basically, I want you to think of it this way, as this. Let's say you were a child and you were a dismissive avoidant and you grew up in a household that repressed your emotions, repressed a natural part of yourself. Like our emotions are built into us, right? Our emotional mechanisms and guidance systems. And they're there for a very purposeful and powerful reason. They're there to let us know if we have needs that are unmet so that we can strive to get those needs met and we can survive and evolve as a result. They're there to help us recognize if we're telling painful stories. We have belief patterns that we're hurting ourselves with. Like an example could be you go into a room full of people at a social event and you're like, nobody here likes me. Everybody hates me. And your emotions are going to give you emotional feedback to say, hey, like you're telling yourself a painful story. Wake up out of that trance and that pattern and recognize. So our emotions are there to let us know that. They're basically letting us know whenever something is out of alignment. And this is a really powerful, beautiful thing. But if you grew up in a family or a household that has made negative associations to emotions as a whole because of their own programs or conditioning, then what you're going to see is that this whole family or household basically demands by default that you repress a natural part of yourself, which of course is a trauma. So it would be like saying your hunger is inappropriate. You being hungry is inappropriate. Don't show anybody that you're hungry. Don't show anybody that you need to eat. Eat food in private. If anybody sees you eating food, you should be ashamed. Like it's just going to be a really dysfunctional thing at its core. And while it's not poorly intentioned, and it's really just trauma being passed down and creating more trauma, of course, one of the sort of default mechanisms of this is that this individual feels shame around themselves because they've been taught that a part of themselves is literally shameful, their emotional part, right? So when this happens and we repress an entire part of ourselves, we learn that we can't give our emotions, we can't share them, we can't express them, we can't talk about them, we can't ask for help around them. And we learn that we can't, as a byproduct of that, it's like, how could we possibly hold space for somebody to give that to us? And I want you to imagine this. If we use the analogy of like a gas tank in a car, and let's say that you grew up in a household where you're not allowed to fill up your gas tank. You can only do it a little tiny, tiny bit, and it has to be in secret, and it's a shameful thing again, right? Your gas tank being like filling up your emotional tank. And then somebody comes along to you when you're trying to make it from here to like your work in the morning on almost no gas. You're like running on empty. And somebody comes up to you and says, hey, can I borrow some gas? What are you going to think and feel? You're going to go into like survival mode and be like, absolutely not. I can't give you any of that. Like, how am I ever going to even make it home? And so, I want you to think of that analogy as often what somebody who's more severely dismissive avoidant might be experiencing. And it's like if they're already running on empty, literally as a survival mechanism, if our cup is empty, part of our survival mechanism is to shut down and withdraw from other people, because there's this concept that's like, if I give any more of myself away than I already have, then it's not possible. And I really want you to hear that language for a second. If I give any more of myself away than I already have, then I might not survive. So I want you to notice the two different manifestations of this. Number one, the manifestation where I've given so much of myself away because I've repressed it all together that I don't have more than I have to give. And this is dismissive avoidant. Then we have the other version of emotional anorexia, which is the fearful avoidant version that goes with part of the fearful avoidant counterdependency behaviors, which is I give of myself completely, yet I block myself to receive, which also gets me into this space where I start running on empty perpetually or pervasively. And if I'm in this space, and when people ask me for more, I also have to put up a wall and establish a boundary and push people away. Now, the fearful avoidance, you'll see like a version of swinging between being really available, but they're never truly fully available. I can't say never, but they're rarely ever truly fully available unless they are allowing themselves also to receive love and connection from others. And if you're not, then you're always going to be operating at a deficit when you're around people, which is why you see part of the reason that fearful avoidants need to withdraw so much. And they can be so consistent and then inconsistent, right? So let's look at the dismissive avoidant, and let's look at the different parts of themselves that they've repressed. And maybe I'll do a separate video on like sexual anorexia, intimacy anorexia, intimacy anorexia specifically. But I want to talk about some of the key symptoms in here of emotional anorexia. So number one, always putting up this front. One of the symptoms is like you're always busy. And this can be somebody who is busy, or this can be like, I have spoken with people. I can think of one person in particular who they were out of work and they were entering into a new relationship, and they were kind of seeing this woman, and they were always saying they were busy. And really, it wasn't so much that they were busy, it was that they were always running on empty. They weren't even working full time, but they just felt like they needed to establish some space and some busyness because they didn't want to have to give when they felt like they were already on empty and didn't have a whole lot to give. Okay. And then we see other patterns, and these are the withholding patterns, okay? We also see blame. Blame can be a big thing. Like a lot of emotional anorexics can blame people, and like, let's say the partner says, we don't spend enough time together. And maybe the person who's experiencing EA symptoms will go, yeah, we don't spend enough time together because you don't make it very much fun, or because and there's this inability to recognize, oh, it's because of something within me that it has short-circuited, so to speak, that makes me not really able to give fully. And these are really important things to recognize. So some of the other withholding symptoms we'll see. So number one, busyness. Number two, blame. And then we'll see like withholding patterns. We will see people withholding love, okay? And this is really like the expression of love. Hey, I love you, I care about you, I appreciate you, these sorts of things. Withholding validation or praise, it's kind of connected to withholding love, but it's really like the validation, the compliments themselves, the recognition of the person in the relationship you're with. And a lot of people will say, giving praise makes me feel like it's unfair because nobody's giving me praise, or like, oh, people don't really need it. And they project from like their experiences. Well, I haven't had it, so it can't be that big of a deal. Not necessarily understanding what it's like to have it and then to not have it, and how the juxtaposition of that from one relationship to another, even if it's parental relationship to adult romantic relationship, can be very painful. So because it's an important part of like the way we connect with one another. Another big thing is withholding sex, and that's where the sexual anorexia or intimacy anorexia can sort of fall under this umbrella. Then we can also have a huge piece of withholding the expression of feelings. So this means like, hey, I feel sad. Hey, how was your day? How do you feel today? What's going on for you right now? Oh, you're sad? Why? What's up? What's happening? Tell me about it. Withholding the expression of sharing your emotional reality with another person, whether it's hearing and holding space from somebody else, or whether it's like actually communicating with that person about how you're feeling. Criticism can be another part, but I would say it's much lesser. And then withholding, like stonewalling is another big symptom, like withholding the expression of how you're feeling when you're in conflict, like honest emotional communication withholding. And then we have withholding material belongings. And this can be things like money. This can be like not wanting to share food. This can be things like not wanting to share belongings, materials, your physical things. And remember, the difference between somebody just having like a moment of this versus actually falling under this umbrella of EA is the fact that the person would have to have these patterns in more of a pervasive way. So it's not like one day somebody's eating their favorite food and they don't feel like sharing and you're like, oh my gosh, they have EA symptoms. It would be like you see that that's a pattern, or you see that they also don't share their materials and belongings. They're unwilling to buy you a cup of coffee if you forgot your wallet in the car. They're unwilling to share a part of their, their clothes that you want to borrow for the weekend, whatever it is. Like there's just like a strong pervasive pattern there, but also in any of the other places. And the last really big piece is withholding having their needs met or expressing their needs so that they can give needs to others that ask for them to be met, or receive needs being met in relationship to others, right? So they think they have to meet their needs themselves. Now here's like a really important part. there's a huge difference between, let's say you're the dismissive avoidant and you meet your own needs, and you're meeting your needs for like through escapism or numbness or just denial of your feelings. That's not really meeting your needs. A lot of dismissive avoidants think that they self-regulate or they're really good at meeting their own needs, but sometimes they're not truly meeting their needs. They're meeting these like surface needs. And one of the examples I used in the webinar earlier was like, if I were to say to you, hey, I like to meet my own needs and I've had a really hard day, so I'm going to go meet my own needs by taking a bunch of drugs. Like, that's not really meeting my needs. That's like numbing and escaping. And you can be like, oh, I'm so good at meeting my needs. But if you have these like just hedonistic escape mechanism ways of meeting your needs, you're probably repressing your feelings and avoiding yourself, not actually meeting your needs. And this is where like the dismissive avoidant creature comforts come in, right? They often carve out a space and they need their space, and that space is to emotionally regulate, but they just binge watch television or play video games for hours, or they're not actually doing anything that's like being present and resolving and transforming the way that they're feeling and going towards their feelings and opening them up and understanding and digesting them properly and processing them effectively. They're just avoiding the whole thing altogether. And so even though like the dismissive avoidant can think they're meeting their needs, that's not always the case. So let's talk about like what's underneath this. And I don't want this to be like the craziest, longest video in the whole world, but there's just so much to unpack here, and it's such a friggin' important topic. So, what are like the underlying symptoms of this? The underlying reasons that these things exist, the withholding of feelings, all these different things, are because first, the individual is repressing these things and has short-circuited these things in relationship to themselves. So if I'm the dismissive avoidant with EA symptoms, if I am not communicating my own feelings to myself and getting in touch with my own emotions to myself, and I can't go, oh, I had a hard day, I'm feeling sad today, let me go unpack that, let me go see what painful stories I've been telling myself today, and let me work to change those stories and try to see the situation differently and challenge some of these old imprints that I'm just reprojecting, or let me see what needs are unmet in my life and let me try to regulate that and show up for my needs, and maybe even reach out and ask for those needs to be met and ask for support from others. If I'm not doing that kind of work, I'm not really regulating myself. I'm just, doing whatever, escaping in some form. So if I can't unpack my own feelings, I definitely can't then go communicate them to others, because I'm blocking them altogether at some level in relationship to self. And another example that I used earlier today in the webinar is like, if we are trying to, let's say you go out in the cold and your hand is frozen, okay? You've been, chopping ice is what I was going to say, but let's just say you've been like digging in snow with your one hand for, a very long time, and your hand is frozen. When you come back in, your hand's going to take a minute to de-thaw. Like, it's not going to you're not going to get all the feeling back in your hand right away. Even if you run it under warm water, you're not going to necessarily get all the sensations back, and it's just going to feel normal and like your blood circulating regularly all of a sudden. What's going to happen is you're going to run your hand under some water or warm it up or whatever, and it's going to take a little bit. And I would use this analogy to describe the way that dismissive avoidants are to their emotions. Like, part of getting back in touch with your feelings, because a lot of DAs, especially with like EA symptoms, more severe, right? A lot of them are repressing their feelings, and they have this like coating of numbness that's been applied over top. And really, numbness is still an emotion, but it's a cover emotion. And in order to start getting back in touch with your emotions, you have to do like feeling work. You have to sit down every day and you have to go, okay, what am I feeling? Where do I feel it in my body? And you have to go through like the list of emotions that we have, or, emotions you find somewhere, and sit and go, okay, what am I feeling and where do I feel it in my body? Oh, I'm feeling betrayed, and betrayal feels like this pit in my stomach, and it feels like this tightness in my chest. Oh, I feel angry, and anger feels like this heat, almost a combination of hot and cold in my shoulders and upper chest and arms. Or, oh my gosh, I feel shame, and I feel shame kind of on my head and neck and upper chest area. And until you can start getting in touch with your emotions, it's really difficult to start doing the processing work underneath. And so that's always like the really important place to start, especially if you're more EA type dismissive avoidant. And when you're in this space, it's not going to be like an overnight thing. It's not going to be like you sit down the first time and you're going to go, okay, what do I feel and where do I feel it in my body? It's going to be like, what do I feel and where do I feel in my body? I don't know. And you have to ask and you have to reflect and you have to feel and you have to think about even like challenging times you had and what emotions you felt then and where you might have felt those in your body. And you have to de-thaw, right? You have to get back in touch with something that you've worked so hard to freeze over or cover up. And it takes a little bit. But what I generally see is that if an individual is willing to commit to this for 7 to 10 days, just regularly checking in and even reflecting over their day, like, how did I feel from 10 until 1 or from 1 until 4 or 4 until 7? What came up for me? Oh, I felt stress going into work. I felt a little bit of nervousness and I felt that sort of in my throat and lower neck area. Oh my gosh, I felt fear and I felt it like really in my gut and on the back of my neck. Like, until you are checking in and checking in, you usually within 7 to 10 days, you start to have these breakthroughs where it's like, oh my gosh, I feel where I'm having the emotion. I can tell where I'm sensing it. And sometimes it like sort of peers its head out slowly and takes a little bit of time to keep developing and really getting those sensations back. But that's what emotions are. They're basically sensations in your body. So that's one of the first steps. Another step is like to transform this is to start communicating your needs to yourself, and not like the I need to go binge watch television needs, but like the real needs. What if I couldn't binge watch television, if I couldn't use any of my creature comforts or coping mechanisms, then what would I need? And how can I start receiving that from other people? And until you feel like it's safe to receive from other individuals, you will instead be in a space of being like, I can't share my gas with you because I need to be able to make it home and survive. But if you're like, if somebody comes up to you and goes, I'll give you some gas from my tank. Will you give me some from yours? We can give each other equal amounts. You might be like, oh, okay. Well, I know I'm going to make it home, so that doesn't sound so bad. And so it's the being able to receive and feel safe receiving as well, and asking that you have to warm yourself up to and start asking from others for things, asking for things from others. And this will be a really important thing to do. So start there. There's honestly so much more to unpack about this, so much more to talk about around this topic. And the fearful avoidant has their own versions of this, usually more rooted in resentment, because they are great at giving, but often they really struggle to receive. So that creates a different layer of EA symptoms. So don't use this as like a way to label people or yourself. These are just programmed patterns that we can call emotional anorexia, because they are basically a series of subconscious coping mechanisms we've developed. But just like they were wired in, they can be deprogrammed or wired out, and replaced with new programming. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was a useful video. I kind of had a lot to say here, so I hope it wasn't too long. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're getting a lot of value out of this channel. And I will see you in the next video.